Alright, welcome everybody. This is GTM here. We're going to be covering a video tutorial on your basic 3-point light setup. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and launch 3D Max. Now, as you can see here, we have a model of, just looks like a regular statue type of model. You are to download this from the digitalvamp.proboards.com in the Intro to Lighting class section. Just feel free to go to I believe it's week 1, and download this model. It'll put up in Max. All right. Like I said, we're going to be covering 3-point lighting, and one thing you got to understand about 3-point lighting, it's it's basically an essential way of lighting all your models up, or any scene really works in a 3-point light setup. You have your basic key light, your fill light, and your backlight. I'm going to show you some examples here, and these images have come from a popular website known as 3D 3D Total here, and I want to show you some of these renders here. Now, I believe this is, I don't know the artist here, but his name is Luis Antonio, so I want to show his website in case you guys want to see his work. Which, by the way, this is 3dtotal.com. Great site to go to if you are an aspiring 3D artist. Now, as you can see here, this model, amazing looking model. But how he has it lit up is your basic 3-point light setup. His key light is obviously coming off right here to the left side. And then he has his fill light, which is basically the light that lays down a little bit less than the 45-degree angle that the key light is at. And its sole purpose is to to basically light up the shadows here. And then of course the last light would be your backlight. And this is usually the case in most renders. You got to understand your basic 3-point light setup. And of course, I'm sure he's got all his other ambient occlusion maps and all that stuff, surface maps that he's got. I'm going to go ahead and show you another example. Alright, and this is looks like it's from I don't want to say, yeah, Neon Genesis. I can never pronounce that. I know it's a famous anime cartoon. Beautiful looking model, and I believe this artist is I guess he goes by Ikadan. He has his website right there. Feel free to check it out. As you can see here, he has his basic 3-point light setup. Looks like the key light is coming from the right side as well, and then from the shadows, it's really well lit. But as you can see, we got our fill light on back here, and then your backlight is basically popping out the character with a rim of some sort. Great looking model, by the way. And by the way, you can see our shadows are going right across here, and that's due to the fact that your key light is usually the light that's casting the main shadow. Alright, feel free to check out his work. And looks like another artist here, basic 3-point light setup. His key light is coming from the left side now, and then the fill light its job is to reveal the shadows, or take the shadows out of darkness. And then you can see the backlight as well right there rimming the character. And this artist is named Nicholas Lesafri. I don't know how to pronounce that. I hope I'm not butchering his name. But he has a MySpace web page if you need to get to it. Alright, and the last artist I want to show you is probably one of my favorite artists. He's a big inspiration to me. I've talked to him a few times before, back in the day when I used to ask him how to rig his characters, or how he rig, what was his process of rigging his characters. And his name is Andrew Hickenbottom. Very amazing artist. And obviously this is one of his new models he's put up. You can see his URL right there in case you needed to check out his work. And as you can see here, he has his key light, and then the fill light. Like I said, its job is to bring the shadows out of the darkness, and of course his backlight. And to be honest, this is an amazing looking render. I'm a big fan of Tron too, so I think that's pretty cool how he decided to come up with this piece here. All right, anyways, but I wanted to show you, these four renders here, and basically what I'm trying to get at is when you showcase your models, with your textures and all that, you have to set up a basic 3-point light setup. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. All right, here now with your model you're going to be working with, let's go ahead and start off. I'm going to go to the top viewport here, and I'm going to go to my lights, and they're right here, lights, and we're going standard, not photometric but standard. I'm going to start off with a target spot here, and I am going to go ahead and start my key light over here. I'm going to click, drag, and as you can see, once our light is set down, now my light at default looks like it was set to like a blue, and I'm going to go to my front viewport and raise that up just a bit, about a 45-degree angle, and I may position, as you can see, the viewport somewhat changes. All right, so I got my first key light laid down. As you can see, this is the main light right here. I'm going to go to my modify. I got the light selected. I'm going to go to modify, and let's check out our settings. First of all, I'm going to go ahead and turn on my shadows, because your key light usually has the main shadow turned on. And I'm going to keep that at a none, and let's go with just a standard white for now. We're not going to worry about the near attenuations or anything, but your spotlight parameters, we're going to work with our fall offs and hot spots. Now, in most cases, you might had started off and your hot spots and fall offs are really tight. So if you look at the top viewport here, your hot spot is the inner blue line, and then your fall off is the outer blue line. Now, through lesson plan or the first video tutorial, you understood the tighter the two are together, the harder the shadow is, the hard edge shadow would be. So I'm going to go ahead and just spread those out. I'm going to raise up my hot spot a little bit and then bring it down to separate the two. As you can see, my top viewport, they're slightly separating. All right, now I'm going to go to my shadow parameters. I'm going to keep my shadows at a 0.7 for the density. It's a good starting point, and my bias at 0.1. And you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and keep my shadow size at 2048, just because I want to have some good detailed shadows here. My sample range I'm going to keep at 7.0. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and hit Alt-W. As you can see, I have my perspective selected, so I'm going to maximize that. And I'm going to give myself my first test render. Alright, as you can see, we got our key light. I'm going to go ahead and frame this up a little bit more. And to be honest, I'm going to turn on my safe frames just so I can see what exactly is being rendered in. And now, you can see that we have our guidelines here. And these are title safe frames. These are normally, normally what you see out within this blue line here may be cut off on TV. But then again, like I said, we're working with a lot of flat screens nowadays. I'm not sure if that really plays a big factor anymore. And then, of course, the orange line you see within here is your title safe action line. So if you have any fonts or text or anything that may be cut off on the on the screen as well. That's mainly for broadcast graphics and stuff. But the reason I'm turning them on here is so I can actually see what I'm rendering. All right, so let's go ahead and give ourselves a test render again. All right, as you can see, we got some pretty decent shadows, and I got a nice key light going on right here. Now the next light we're going to create is our fill light, and its job is basically to highlight and bring these shadows out of the darkness. Alright, so I'm going to go to my top viewport here, and I'm going to go ahead and hit shift, and I'm going to duplicate this light right across here. Alright, and I may actually take that target of my second light and just slightly position it. Not that you have to. I'm going to reposition that a little bit over here. Now, if you notice, remember from my first video tutorial, if you have two lights crossing, it's gonna multiply what we have. So we have one light set to multiplier 1.0 and a type none. So I'm gonna take my second light, and this is your fill light. I'm gonna go ahead and bring this slightly down. And I'm gonna turn off I'm gonna hit F4 on my front viewport, so you don't. Actually, you know what? Let's go smooth. I'm right clicking smooth, and then got smooth and highlights, and I'm gonna hit my grid and get rid of my edges by hitting F4. Alright, now my fill light right here, I'm gonna bring slightly lower than the key light, and of course I can re-bring that key light just slightly down. Alright, now, but the fill light right here, I'm going to turn this to an inverse. We want to tone that down. We don't want it so powerful. And then, as you can see in our perspective window here, that it's slightly turned down the strength. Alright, so I'm going to go probably adjust this multiplier maybe slightly down just a bit. And let's go ahead and give ourselves a second render. But also let's check to make sure our shadows are off. And looks like everything else is okay. I'm going to go ahead and give myself a second render. Alright, so the fill light has done its job. Now you can see the details. We can see kind of his ribs, his chest a little bit more. Alright, and we got got his face out of the darkness a bit. Alright, now the last light we're going to throw in there is our backlight. So I'm going to go to my top viewport here, which by the way I Alt-W'd out. Go to my top viewport. And let's go ahead and we can either duplicate one of these, or I'm just going to go ahead and create another one from scratch. And my backlight, I am going to bring it from here. Now your backlight's usually opposite of your key light. So I'm going to bring that right about there. And as you can see, my settings are pretty much the same. And I'm going to go ahead and go for my left viewport, and I'm going to raise this up a bit. And now your backlight is usually really high and pretty much right above the character. Somewhere, I'm going to bring that down just a bit. Now the whole goal of the backlight is we're trying to create a rim right around the character to pop them out. So I'm going to take that light, go to its modify list here, my modifiers by the way, and make sure my shadows are turned off. We want to make sure our multiplier is set to inverse. And I'm going to zoom up on my perspective window here, and I'm going to play with my multiplier. As you can see, it starts to slightly rim out our character. So that looks pretty good right about there. Alright, I'm going to give myself a test render now and see how it's shaping up. Alright, so looks like we got a pretty decent 3-point light setup here. We have our key light. Now we have our fill light, which is 45, or a little bit below the 45 degrees, or set a little bit lower than the key light. And then of course our backlight, which is set really high. So if you look at the layout, you can see backlight set really high. This is our key light, and then our fill light is a little bit lower. Our fill light is a little bit lower than the key light, and our backlight is definitely higher than the key light as well. Alright, so now that we got that set up, we're going to go ahead and start playing with some of our light colors and, get a feel with our light lister, just so we can get a little practice. Alright, here we go. We're going to start playing with our light lister and adjusting some of our lights. So, I'm going to go ahead and You know, before I do that though, let's get in the habit of naming our lights. So I'm going to click on my first light here, which is my key, and I'm going to call this key light. Key light. This one right here I'm going to click on. I'm going to name that my fill light. And then right here, the back one, let's call this our backlight. Alright. Alright, now I'm going to go right back. That's Alt W, by the way. Or, you know, if you need to get there, if you don't know your hotkeys quite yet, it's right here. Zoom all. It's actually, it's called maximize the viewport toggle. Alright, so we got our basic 3-point light setup going on. I'm going to go ahead and go to Tools, Light Lister. And as you can see now, we have all our lights on the scene. We have our key light, fill light, and backlight. Now, our key light is multipliers 1.0, fill light's at a 0.55, and our backlight's at 1.7. Our shadow maps are turned on for just our key light. Shadow map size are 2048. All our biases are 1.0, and our sample ranges are at 7. So we're looking pretty good. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust my key light color. And at the same time while I'm doing this, I'm going to go ahead, go to my renderer, hold it down, and I'm going to get to my active shade render. I'm going to click that. This is going to calculate my active shade render. Now this is not your true render, but at least here I can start adjusting my lights, and so I can get some kind of a dramatic feel going on. So I'm going to click on my color swatch here, and I'm going to change that to say, let's pick maybe like a slight blue, and I'm going to raise that up. There we go, we got a nice little blue tint going on. Now, my fill light, we can, you know, like I said, you can do some dramatic light. I'm going to click OK here, and I'm going to click on my fill light. And you know what, maybe we'll go with, I'll go with same kind of blue, but a little bit, maybe a little bit lighter. Bring that down just slightly. And as you can see, the minute we make any subtle changes, active shade will start calculating. Well, this is, you know, obviously we don't have a lot of stuff in our scene, so it calculates really fast. You're going to see a red line come across and then a green line down. Alright, so my backlight, you know, I'm going to go ahead and press OK here. And on my backlight, I don't know, maybe I'll go with like a, let's go with a green. I'm going to crank that up. There you go. Now you can see we have a nice backlight rim. That's the idea of the backlight, is to rim the character out. And you know, I may adjust the fill light again. Maybe I'll go with a, you know, maybe what if I went with a darker blue? That's what's great about this, that looks good. That's what's great about this, you know, light lister and our active shade render. You know, we're able to, you know, adjust our lights on the fly. Now I can even adjust my multipliers. You know, maybe I wanted my multiplier to be a little bit stronger, so let's go with a 1.5 on my key light. As you can see, we're blowing that out now. That wasn't quite such a good idea, but you get the idea. And you know, maybe I needed my backlight to be a little bit stronger. Maybe I'll go 2. There we go. Alright, but I think 1.5 is probably gonna be good enough. Now the whole idea, you know, it all depends on how far your light is from the subject as well. Alright, so that's the idea of using our light lister and our active shade render. So we can start adjusting, you know, our lights on the fly. Or, you know, instantaneous. Alright, like I said, but this is not our true render. So I'm going to go ahead and close this out now. I'm going to close out our light lister. And remember, your light lister is right there. It's in Tools, Light Lister. Alright, and then the active shade render is right here. Hold it down, and then you can hit active shade render, and you see a red light calculating, and then a green light. Now remember, when you're using your active shade render, not to always close it. You know, every time you do it, you close it, then you have to recalculate it. So that could be kind of a problem if you have like a really huge scene. It takes a good couple minutes to calculate everything. You wouldn't want to close it and then have to redo it again. Alright, so but I'm going to switch this to my regular render now by holding it down, and this is our true render. Alright, and there we go. Now, the next step is, you know, for you to complete your lab though, I want you to combine your diffuse render with your AO or ambient occlusion render. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of zoom out here, and I'm just going to get me, you know, kind of look that I want. Let's go something about right there. I'm going to go ahead and give that a render. This is about the angle I want. There we go. Now, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to save that out. I'm going to render that one last time. Alright, I'm going to save this out as my diffuse. And I'll just call this, save it out as a PNG. I'll call this my diffuse pass. Save it out. Make sure your alpha is checked. Keep everything else standard. Hit OK. Next thing I'm going to do is let's go ahead and set up our ambient occlusion pass. And hopefully you guys remember how to do that. Now, our ambient, I got a video. Just feel free to go to the forums and look up the GTM multimedia video tutorials and go over and watch the ambient occlusion pass. Otherwise, I'll do it through here one last time. So I'll hit my M key. I'm going to grab a blank shader, standard, and I'm going to look for my mental ray shader. But before we do that, we actually have to switch the renderer. Remember, we're in scanline renderer, and scanline is just the one scanline that goes down. So I got to go to render setup, and we're going to switch that, assign render here. I'm going to switch it to mental ray, press OK. And now I'm going to go to my standard shader, blank one, hit standard, and now we got to look for that mental ray shader, which is right there. I'm going to double click that in the surface slot. Got to look for the ambient. There it goes, the ambient reflective occlusion. And by the way, I'm just typing AM in the browser. Now remember, I'm using 2011 here, guys. Double click, and my sample ranges. Remember, I'm going to change that to 64, just because I want, you know, better detailed ambient passes. Now I'm going to go to my parent level. Click there, and then I'm going to call this my dirt map. You can call it ambient map or whatever, dirt, doesn't matter. Now I'm going to, with this still open, I'm going to go to my processing tab, turn on material override, and I am going to drag this right there in the none slot. Instance, OK. Now I'm going to go to my renderer tab and change these settings here from 1 to 64, and I'll keep it at Mitchell. Now I explained about these settings in the previous tutorial. Now I'm going to go ahead and render out my ambient pass. Oh, one last thing I forgot. In 2011, we have to make sure inside our ambient map right here. By the way, I went inside, I clicked in here. We've got to change our max distance to 0 or 0.0. That way it doesn't blow out our ambient pass, and I'm going to go ahead and re-render that. That looks pretty good. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and save my ambient pass here. as a PNG. We'll call this ambient pass. Save out. Make sure alpha's checked. Press OK. And remember, if you want to go back to your regular diffuse pass, you can always just come back to your processing tab, uncheck material override, and it'll render. But now it'll be rendering in mental ray, but it's still your diffuse pass, which is awesome. As mental ray, depending on your processor, you know, will render out a lot quicker. All right, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and save that one as well. We'll call this our diffuse pass mental ray because it was done in mental ray. All right, and that will be a PNG as well. Now your last step is to take it into, take it into Photoshop and combine the two. So I'm going to go ahead and launch up Photoshop here. Okay, now with Photoshop open, I'm going to go ahead and open up that image. Now I'm going to go ahead and open up my ambient pass, and you know what? I'm going to play with both diffuse passes here. You notice mental ray slightly. Here we go. I kind of want to work with this one here. So I'm going to go ahead and take that. You drag your ambient pass right over your diffuse pass. And I'm going to make sure these are lined up properly. I don't know if I have my snaps turned on. Nope. Alright, so make sure those are aligned properly. And go ahead and, what's your ambient pass here? If you want, go ahead and name that ambient. We'll call this one diffuse. Take your ambient, multiply it by your blend mode. Alright, looks pretty good. And then you usually bring it down about 75%. And now we have a nice ambient occlusion pass mixed in with our diffuse pass, so we get our nice soft shadows. Now the cool thing is you can actually, we can come back and adjust these or color correct or whatever. I may throw something, my ambient pass, instead of having it just gray, I can stylize this a little bit by going to my image, curves, adjustments, curves. I can either brighten it, darken it. Maybe I want to come down to my red channel, kill the reds a little bit. Maybe I want to go to my blue channel and raise that a bit. Or maybe I want to bring it down, so I'm getting more of a greenish type of ambient pass. And I'm going to press OK, and then I can actually mix those two together. Bring my pass down a bit. Alright, so you get, kind of like a different style of ambient. I might come in and once those are put together, I'm going to, combine the two and maybe play with a filter or something. Oh, make sure you're always in mode, 8-bit mode. Notice I'm in 16, so my adjustments, my filters are somewhat grayed out in certain areas. So I'm going to go image, mode, make sure I'm in 8-bits. And let's try one of these filters. Filter gallery. My diffuse glows right here. I can probably crank that up a bit, style it out. See my glows blow it out, but not too much. Maybe a little bit clear. Press OK, and maybe I will. I already got enough noise on it now, but that looks pretty good. Leave it at that, and then take that, save it out as a JPEG, and then post it up in the forums. and that will count for your lab. Feel free to give me, if you want to give me some different kind of light setups, combinations. Uh, feel, be more than, you know, be more than happy to check them all out. Anyways, until next time, I hope you guys learned a thing or two about 3-point light setups, and hopefully it'll make your models really stand out. Oh yeah, don't forget the ambient occlusion pass.